So you clicked on this video because you're wondering why I switched from the Fuji X100V, an absolutely fantastic camera, to the Leica M10-R. And to give you the quick, simple answer, simply because I wanted to. So if you follow this channel for any amount of time or care to kind of just dig through the archives of what all else is on this channel, you may have realized early on that I actually started pretty early on shooting with the Leica camera, not the M6 but an M4P. I've gone through Leicas for a long time, ever since 2015, 16, something like that. And they've kind of just been my favorite film photography camera, my absolutely all-time favorite film photography camera. I've shot with a plethora of other cameras, from the Pentax K1000 to medium format to 645 cameras, pretty much everything. But the one thing that has stayed consistent throughout my journey is the Leica, and more specifically the Leica M6. What I like so much about this camera over everything else is its simplicity, its ease of use with its light meter, and I just get the results I want with it. So you may also know, and I'll link the playlist above, that I really do enjoy just the Fuji series of cameras. I have used an X-T3, an X-T4, an X100F, and the V, but I really only made videos with the V, just taking kind of street and documentary photography with the V. And I know I just came back to this camera and I love being able to customize it and put this skin on it, and I just absolutely adore this camera. And to be completely honest, I would keep this camera, but it feels excessive to just have this and then just have a digital Leica camera. I don't see a point in me carrying around both cameras. I don't think there's any benefit to that, because I like to carry around a film camera and a digital camera whilst I'm out on the street or just kind of perusing around life. I like to carry both, and yeah, it doesn't make sense for me to carry around two digital cameras, although they do kind of operate a little bit differently. But like I said, I love this camera. I have very little issues with it. I think the main issue I have with this camera is because it's not like a full frame sensor or anything, its performance in low light situations and the autofocus in low light situations is kind of limiting, and I'm figuring that out as the seasons kind of change and my addiction to kind of street and documentary photography is taking place in lower light situations. I really want a camera that can really just handle itself in those type of situations. I want to be able to switch lenses from a 50mm to a 28 to a 35, and I know you can get like the teleconversion lenses with this camera, but to be honest, I made a video on the wide conversion lens with this camera, and I ended up not liking it that much. Nothing to do with like image quality or anything like that. It was more so just kind of cumbersome to carry around. I didn't like just having this extra piece of gear that I needed to attach to the camera to go about, you know, just making photos with it. And it kind of just threw off the weight of the camera. It was very kind of just front heavy, and I would always have to just switch adapter rings from the 35mm onto the WCL adapter. So that was really annoying, and I ended up just selling it off. But I've made, I feel like, just some of my best photos recently with this camera, and I absolutely just love the image that comes out of this camera. Image quality and this camera is not a problem whatsoever. So moving on to the M10, I feel like the reason that I really just enjoy Leica gear is simply because it's simple. And I know you hear that just a lot across every platform you read about this camera, every video you kind of just watch on this camera. They truly are simple tools, and you see that just in the physicality of the camera body. And you see that in relation to the Fuji, they are extremely similar. And if you've ever walked with me on the street, you always hear me say one thing about my X100V is just, I really wish they would put a focus tab on the lens. Do that, put an actual like rangefinder patch or something in the camera, and you guys have made the absolute perfect street photography camera, minus it not being a full frame. But I just love the M10 because it's so similar to my M6. Being able to carry this M10 and the M6 side by side feels great. I mainly shoot with my 28mm Voigtlander lens and my 50mm Voigtlander lens because that's all I can afford for these just Leica cameras. I can't necessarily dish out the money for this body and, you know, kind of just official Leica lenses. But switching from the M6 to the M10 just feels so much better because it's familiar. All the buttons and everything are in the same place. They all do the same exact things. The only difference is mainly just the ISO dial on the camera, and then having kind of just half stops in between the shutter speeds on the shutter dial. But other than that, focusing and spot metering is pretty much the same. I will say that I do get kind of nervous sometimes when metering with the M10 because I feel like if you're in just heavily backlit situations or like very dynamically lit situations, the camera metering will just kind of get a little confused, and you may have to just take like 2 or 3 exposures at different settings to just make sure that you got the photo where you want it. But switching from an autofocus system to a manual focus system is no problem for me at all because, like I said, I've been using the M6 or just like the Leica M series cameras since 2015. So zone focusing and distance focusing is not a problem. I absolutely love and prefer manual focus over autofocus. I find it just quicker for my situation and what I do personally. But you may find autofocus to be an easier kind of system for you to use. But when you're crossing the street and you're walking through large crowds that are moving fast and your subject that you really want to capture is going in and out of just kind of your focus range or zone, and you're hunting because you have a Fuji and you're hunting because so much different stuff it keeps crossing that focal point, you're kind of just up in the air on if you will capture that image in focus. But what I love to just do with zone focusing is being able to set the camera where I want it at f8, f11, and just know that everything in this focal distance is going to be in focus, and that I can just quickly make that adjustment if I need to and still capture the photo. So some quick details just about both of these cameras and just how they feel in the hand. The Fuji is definitely a lighter camera, and this isn't a video to say go with the M series camera or any M series camera over Fuji, or go with the Fuji over any M series camera, because if you know and if you've used both systems, I definitely recommend renting a digital Leica camera before you buy it, because they're not cheap buys. And the same with Fuji, renting, you know, a camera and just testing and experiment with it. Always rent a camera before you purchase. But there's definitely just a weight difference in the camera. The Fuji is lighter. It's a lot more compact, sort of pocketable if you don't put any kind of just adapter rings and stuff, and just kind of carry the camera as is. It's pretty slim. It's a lot slimmer than the Leica M10, but the Leica M10 is a lot heavier, has like a nice little heft and weight to it because of the material it is made out of. And then depending on the lens that you have on the body, you have to factor in that weight and depth that it adds to the camera as well. So another difference between both of these cameras is the menu system. The Leica menu system really kind of just has like one menu, and it's kind of just like 4 scrolls, you know, full bar scrolls. If you just think of like the sidebar that scrolls along the menus. And the Fuji has just a ton, and in a way that is kind of overwhelming. The Fuji's cool because it's customizable and you can change the buttons to what you want them to be. But if you're a photographer like me that will shoot film or shoot another camera and kind of just set this down for a while, and then you come back to pick it up, it's really hard to just get back into the groove of how the camera operates, because you don't know which buttons do what, and you end up having to just put a lot of things in auto or aperture, shutter, ISO priority, anything like that, until you kind of just get back into that groove. Whereas with the Leica, you just have the option of aperture priority, or Do you have shutter priority? I don't know. I really don't ride the shutter in auto. I usually set that to manual, and I will use the ISO in auto more so when it just gets to more low light situations, or just the lighting is changing too drastically. I will put the camera back on auto ISO and then try and stick around f8, 5.6 and above. I don't like really going too low on rangefinders, as it can just seem difficult to zone focus with the lower apertures. In terms of stealthiness on the street, honestly, neither of these cameras, in my opinion, are that stealthy. Yes, the Fuji is much quieter, and I can kind of compare the sound of the shutters. Here's the Fuji. And then here is the M10. So they're not that stealthy. I mean, the Fuji is definitely more stealthy, sorry. But I think the stealthiest street camera is the Ricoh GR3, 2, or whatever series, because they're just these pocket-sized cameras that just make you look like a tourist. The Fuji definitely has touristy vibes to it. The Leica more so kind of does not have touristy vibes, but I do get a lot of comments on the street when carrying just this or my M6. A lot of people notice it and just go, nice camera. I never really got those comments with like the Ricoh or the Fuji, because they kind of just look like more standard cameras, nothing necessarily too special about them. People do think that the Fuji is a film camera all the time, which I think is really just fun and cool, and I just let them believe the lie. So one thing I do want to talk about with both of these cameras is color. I think both of these cameras put out amazing colors, and Fuji definitely has a great benefit with just having absolutely amazing JPEGs and the film simulations that you can kind of put out in camera. I really do kind of just wish the Leica, M10 is an absolutely phenomenal and great camera, and I think it would just be super cool if there's just customizable options to your JPEGs, to really just get them to look how you want, grain levels and all that, like you can with the Fuji. But Leica's Leica, and it's just gonna be that way. But yeah, the benefit of just having great, almost fully just edited images outside of the camera with the Fuji is absolutely amazing. Now with the Leica, I've been taking a lot of photos with this, and I just haven't really been looking at them too much on the computer, because I'd want to separate myself from my images so I can just look at them in a just more clear-minded space. But from what I've seen of some of the images I have kind of just looked at and played with in Lightroom and Capture One, my God, the colors, I've never seen colors just look so accurate to real life, and I'm not exaggerating. It's probably hard to communicate over the web because of compression and color stuff that happens when you export videos, but just looking at a raw file from this camera, I'm in awestruck, because I'm just like, that looks 100% how I saw it in real life. And when it comes to just editing the photos, you feel like you don't want to do much to the photos, but the color that I get out of this camera is the best I believe I've ever seen across any camera. So the final kind of just verdict or saying or farewell is that I just personally enjoy Leica. I know both of these cameras kind of just from and I don't really want to call this like political standpoint or anything like that, from a social standpoint, that's the proper terms, support Black creators, photographers, and I'm proud of both of them for doing that. And I feel like I'm just leaning on the side of the Leica more, just because it speaks to me as a photographer. Leicas have a lot of just sentimental meaning to me, because they are always just, their film cameras are something that I've always used to document my life, document my father, document my family, and I just have created so many special memories with this camera system, from the Q to the M10 to the M9, all the way to the M6, the M2, the M3, the M4. I've just loved them so much, and I think I'm done playing around. And I say that knowing that another camera is going to come at some point. Like, we're not playing any games here. Cameras are camera, gear are gear. Choose what you want. If you want film simulations and you really don't want to spend time editing photos, I recommend going with the V over the M10. But if you just want that Leica rangefinder, manual focus, manual camera experience, then definitely consider going with an M240, M262, M8, M9. There are definitely other options outside of a 10. You don't have to get a 10 if you don't want. There's a vast kind of variety of options, and you know, you will complain or just think, or you know, kind of go back and forth about just the price of these things. But honestly, if you just know the gear you want to invest into because you feel like it will help you along your journey, and I do believe certain tools do help certain people a lot better than other tools, you know, you'll know what to go with. And I guess that's kind of my final word. So thank you guys for watching this video. Please consider subscribing and definitely hit that like button down below, because that helps YouTube and me kind of just know that I need help and I need people to watch these videos. I really enjoy doing this. YouTube gives me just so much happiness in life. So thank you all. More videos coming. Catch you later. Peace.